Hey, all you songbirds out there, welcome to TaleFeather. I'm glad you joined us. I'm Nick Crutchfield, host here at TaleFeather Podcast. Today, we are joined with a luminary in this industry for the no and low alcohol, mindful drinking, adult beverage scene. We've got the ever so admirable Noah Villenueve with us. Noah and I met at Tales, to give you a little bit of background. We met at Tales of the Cocktail in person this past July. I knew immediately I was going to be friends with this guy. He is an amazing human being, a gentle soul, a very thoughtful person, and I am beyond ecstatic to be able to have him here with us today. So, Noah, can you give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of information about yourself, where you come from, and why you are here with us today?
Wow. What an intro to live up to, Nick. That's very kind of you. I appreciate your kind words. It's lovely to see your face, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, I'm very happy to have you.
My story is it's in some ways unique, and in some ways not unique at all. Um, it's been a strange last, I guess, 15 years, which has been dominated by the food and beverage industry and hospitality, with little pockets of the music industry intertwined as well. I started in the service industry when I was 16. I started in milkshakes, and then I moved through.
Oh, wow.
I studied music at a degree level, and then ended up working in pubs and bars throughout that period, sticky floor music venues, pretty rough and ready situations, serving grumpy old men, craft ales, and lots of cider, because I worked in a place called Bristol, just outside of London, which is very well known for its cider. And then I moved into the music industry. I started being an assistant on the road and kind of helping tour manage big pop tours, which was very cool. Got to do that for a few years. I'm giving a very fast-forwarded version for you.
That's fine. That's fine.
When I left the music industry, slash, I left slash got told to leave. Things didn't work out the way I'd intended.
Yeah.
My behavior got the better of me, shall we say. I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I was a kid in a candy store, and I decided to go work in cocktails. So I obsessed with cocktail bars.
Very good.
If I wasn't behind the bar, I was on the other side as a customer, and so I just dove headfirst into that. Rise up the ranks very fast in a company. Ended up writing menus, traveling around the country, opening sites, training big teams. I fell in love with like the education side of it, and kind of getting other people as excited as I was about what I was doing in drinks. I then got more into restaurants and then the food side of things. So therefore wine became a big part of my life. Studied for my WSETs, became sommelier, started running wine bars and Italian restaurants. And that was, like another era in my hospitality career. And then really fast forwarding through to that, we come up to April 2022, and I quit drinking, which I tried to do many times before. I think I knew very early on that my drinking behavior was a little different to a lot of people around me, and B, was going to be an issue at some point. It wasn't a matter of whether I had to, it was a matter of when I was going to address it. And I think I hid away from that for a very long time. So I addressed that, in 2022. And then I was like, I have no idea what to do. I'm going to have to jump ship, because I'd worked with non-alc brands, and I was aware of the no and low space, but even, it's moved so much in the last 2 years that even 2 years ago, I was intimidated by the idea of how I was going to be able to cope working in food and beverage, or whether I'd be able to. And I'd spent the last 10 years honing skills for something that might have been completely void now. Was I going to have to just go sit in an office, and was I going to have to do something that just wasn't me in order to just fit with the lifestyle I'd chosen to lead? that didn't sit well with me. So I took myself away. I didn't go to a center or anything, but I used the outdoors as like a rehabilitation clinic. And I traveled around the west coast of Canada and the States, and my family are from Canada. So I went and we've got a cottage in Northern Ontario. I went and spent a month out there, just like taking some time and letting things sit and just trying to recalibrate, because life was this whole new thing that I had no idea how to navigate as a non-drinker. And I'd spoken to different people about what sort of stuff I could do, and I got really lucky that a job got recommended to me that popped up in London, and that was helping launch the UK's first no and low bar and shop for Club Soda, which they've been a big entity in the UK for a really long time around mindful drinking. So I went and helped launch that, and was in charge of the bar side of things, cocktail curation, and yeah, I was part of that whole project for 12 months. That takes us up to October, and that's where I'll pause, because we can talk about what I'm up to a bit later. No.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm excited about this this session, because I thought that we had talked about music a little bit, but I didn't know how far into it you were. I used to run concert venues for a long time, so it's really fun to be with somebody that has followed a very similar path. I largely don't drink. I'm not going to say I'm sober, because I will taste for trainings, like if I'm studying for WSET or WSET, or if I am analyzing, I'll taste and spit. And I do like the occasional glass of bubbles. And if you've watched one of these episodes, you know that at this point. But I largely don't drink. And I love your approach, the homeopathic approach of getting back out into nature and getting back out into the rhythm of life, pretty much, instead of the one that's prescribed to us, the one that you have chosen to follow. And it takes a lot of guts for that, and it takes a lot of introspection into what could be, and that's a fearful thing, and it can be, at least. And it sounds like you leaned into it, and you've come out the other side, this bright shining diamond. And I love the energy that you've brought in what you've gone through to get where you are. A friend of mine says there's no hero without a struggle, and we can't be our own hero if we don't go through some sort of struggle, right? So I'm
100%. I think
I like
that's
this
a great
guy
line.
a lot. And,
I
think it is.
I think I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment as well, because I didn't just stop drinking and then I was like, okay, time to leave the industry. I still ran a wine bar for the first 3 months of my sobriety. That I don't recommend people do. Like that was a little tough. There are better ways of doing it, but like I said, I think there was part of me that always liked to kind of really push myself to the limit. So that did that for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have a problem with it because I'm a flavor nerd, and I've got to be able to record flavor, and I've got to be able to experience the textures and aromas and taste. So that's been my hard curtail of. But what if I don't get to smell something that I've smelled 1,000 times before again? So it's just weird. You are based in the UK. Excuse me for my cough. Still got the tail end of a cold. You're based in the UK, as you said, London, Bristol, that kind of mid region of England, I guess. When we look at evolution of the no and low aspects, and I do want to take, and I've done this before, and I'll do it 1,000 times more in these episodes. No and low are two different things. We're going to pay respect to both of those things in separate aspects. We might refer to them as the no and low movement going forward through this episode, but I do want the listeners and the viewers to understand that they are two very separate things. No means a sacred space. It means no alcohol. It means the legal definition in most countries is 0.5% ABV. I love the little things that pop up now. 0.5% ABV or lower. In some countries, it's 0.7 or 0.07. So whatever that country's legal definition is what we'll pay respect to, but henceforth we will lump them in, but not as like low as a safe space for sober, because it's not. There's alcohol
for sure.
There's alcohol
and I mean
in the low space. It's just a mindful consumption model.
Yeah, the lines are becoming increasingly more apparent as well. Not that it's like against each other, but the
Yeah.
low space is
No.
developing very quickly, and lots of products are coming to market very fast in the
Mhm.
low space. So it'll be a lot easier for people to differentiate. But yeah, I agree.
Right. Right. And I don't think that they need to be separate from each other because I'm all about inclusive hospitality. The show is about inclusive hospitality and making sure that everyone has a seat at the table. Unless you're acting up and causing problems for people, then you can wait outside until you can act like an adult. But
Yeah.
as far as like having seats at the table, we want everyone to feel welcome. That's why I got into this side of the business. So in the UK, what are some of the major shifting sands that you experience when it comes to the non-alc and the low ABV movements? Low ABV movements. Say that 5 times fast.
Well, if we're talking about, like the last 18 months, the UK has really taken it in its stride. The increase in visibility of products, not just existing, but existing on trade in bars
Hmm.
and restaurant menus, on supermarket shelves, nationwide, adverts on trains,
Okay.
buses, planes, sporting events. It's like a completely,
Wow.
we are miles ahead of where we were 2 years ago. It
Okay.
feel it's difficult because I do think I exist in somewhat of an echo chamber. However, it is definitely clear that the UK is more accepting of the idea of it. It's not.
Hmm.
It's less the question why. That's being asked less. It's more what and how.
Okay. Okay.
Um, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change I've seen is just the fact people's mindsets have changed a lot. And post COVID, I think that has had an impact on people's outlook regarding physical and mental well-being and alcohol's impact on that. And
Yeah.
I, because the UK is so ingrained with booze culture, and don't get me wrong, it's still an extremely boozy country, but there is definitely
Right.
a big conversation happening now across all age groups. It seems like more people have been affected by it, whether that's on a personal level. You're definitely within 2 degrees of separation of somebody who is moderating or
Wow.
has stopped or is thinking about stopping or has had issues. It's touching lives of everyone, and it feels less judgmental. Again, I'm not
Hmm.
speaking on behalf of all circles, but it does feel like for a lot, I can walk into a lot more pubs now and order a non-alcoholic drink, feel included, and not feel like I'm being judged for drinking it. Not, um,
Yeah.
also the UK has just had a
Uh,
stupendous amount of products be like produced here in the last few years.
yeah.
A
Y'all have
lot
a
of
really
incredibly,
good product mix in that country.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it also feels
Yeah.
like it feels like the UK palate has also changed a lot in the last 5 years. I think 5 years ago, even the idea of something like an Aperol would have really tripped people up, and they would have been like, "That's too
Oh
bitter."
wow.
But especially
Okay.
strange because of our neighbors who Spain, Italy,
Right.
France, Germany, all of
Everything's
these
bitter.
countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much bitter flavor, or like extremity of flavor. I even think of like a super acidic Riesling. Like there are
Yeah.
such a wider range of palates in other countries, but the UK has had they've reduced their continuum of like flavor options to a really small amount, but now it's expanded and people are like into bittersweet flavors, and people are looking for aperitif and
Oh
people are
wow.
looking for amaro. So obviously there's always been a culture around that, but it's been significantly
Yeah.
smaller. It's been brought to the mainstream now, and you can see things that Carmine Campari red on a shelf, and people kind of understand a bit better what that means and are seeking it out. So that's been a nice perfect storm as well, where I think more of
Okay.
a value has been put on quality and range of flavor.
Okay. So you've got more options, better options, and more and better accepting palates, which is kind of the perfect storm for new product development. And you've got some really interesting distilleries in the alcohol side of the world popping up in England too, and even some non-alc production companies that are making some very, very cool things there. And I'm excited to get back across and see what's going on in the UK firsthand. Hopefully that'll happen sometime in the fall.
Great, man.
Next year. We'll see.
Well, I'll
and I
be
do
here.
want to make this. Yeah, I can't wait to see you in your country. Or maybe at Tales First. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed on those seminars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being that we're not a medical show, I want to make sure that people understand we're not handing out medical advice. This is that blurb. Just science-based facts as much as we can. We'll talk about physiology and biological systems and whatnot. But I do want to know what the UK and the European communities think about the rise of the functional category. So here in the US, and I told you pre-show that we talk a little bit about here, there, and maybe a little bit of the EU, but I do want to ask about adaptogens, functional beverages, stuff like reishi, kava, CBDs, whatnot. Here in the States, as you know, things are kind of opening up for prohibition of other adaptogens, and that some of the states have full-blown access to things, and then some have very limited access, and then some have zero, depending on like psychotropic elements for adaptogenics. And I don't really want to touch into those so much because those are still federally illegal. But I do want to touch more on like the functionals such as reishi or kava or mud water kind of things, but just that kind of chaga chino kind of aspect.
Yeah.
Like, what is the UK market like for functionals?
It's safe to say the UK is significantly further behind the west coast of the States on this, or let's say the US in general.
Okay.
I'm biased. I think the UK non-alc scene is booming and one of the best in the world right now. But when it comes to functional beverages, it's slightly behind the curve compared to the States. And I think some of that comes with a history around law and flexibility of certain drug laws. I'm not going to go down that path, but I do think there's a different mindset because of our government's different takes on certain things. Therefore, the UK is just a little stunted in that growth area. So we're really only just coming. I mean, this year we really saw a huge peak for CBD drinks. Absolutely, people are like getting on board with it and understanding it now, and like, oh, what does this mg mean versus this mg? So you see CBD drinks in like meal deals in Sainsbury's and Tesco's, like our major supermarkets. So they are a mainstream product now. However, the government has already come out and said this is not a safe amount regarding milligram. So there's already a bit of like a clamping down on it because it was having such success. You know, I think the last year, 18 months, you couldn't even get on a train in the UK and not see a can of X, Y, and Z brand. There's a few household names now in the CBD category, CBD soft drink category, who've done very well. So that's kind of where CBD sits. But then outside of that, in more functional adaptogenic products, there is definitely a buzz, but it's not mainstream. It still feels a little bubbling away under the surface. There's some incredibly good people making some really cool beers and teas and wines and stuff with mushrooms. It's a very good mushroom beer brand that I love out of Wales. And people are like slowly starting to understand what is lion's mane, what is reishi, what do these do, what do the properties like have, what am I putting in my body? You know, I used to advise people when people would come into the club soda shop and be like, what are all these? What is ashwagandha? What is valerian? What is lemon balm? And you know, we have a health food store here called Holland and Barrett, and it's kind of where you'd find all of these things historically for the last 2 decades. You know, they've always been there, but they've been in teas or like cereal bars and chocolates and stuff. So, but there isn't a massive crossover of people in these two places. So when we start seeing adaptogenic based ingredients in more mainstream places, people have no idea what this is. And education is the buzzword here. I think education is a keyword around the non-alcoholic space, but it's so important when it comes to the mood altering adaptogen space, because some of those words are scary and confusing. And even when they're explained to you, it's like, but then how much can I have? Like, can I drive? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and there probably isn't enough regulation around labeling and understanding the whole picture. So there's not enough education, which is I think why the UK is slightly behind on that.
I think it's kind of hard too, though, because like everyone's personal systems, it hits differently, right? So like if I were to have 5 milligrams of CBD, I'm asleep. But if my friend Andrew, who lives up in DC, has like 25 milligrams, it takes that to put him to sleep. So or not to sleep, but just chill. So
for sure,
it's such a strange, undiscovered, largely science. Like we're still trying to figure it out. And I don't disagree with you. I think some more regulation is probably not a bad thing for right now, at least until we fully understand it. That's just my take on it. Not professional by any means.
Same.
When you look at the on-premise, for those of you that don't know what on-premise, off-premise is, off-premise would be like grocery stores, bottle shops, retail. On-trade or on-premise would be like restaurants, bars, pubs, event venues, so forth. So when we look at the on-premise or on-trade in the UK with the non-alc and low space, it doesn't matter if it's functional or non-functional. You had mentioned that people are past the why. They're past that judgy kind of nonsensical bullshit that we have to go through when we're first stopping to drink. So I went about 1.5 years without having anything. People were like, "Why aren't you drinking?" And I'm like, "Well, it's really none of your business." But here's why, since you asked. So you're in the how and the what phase, which is a really good phase to be in. What are like maybe the top 3 or 4 things that you see systems wide that the everyday, because you and I are in a microcosm of cocktail culture. Like we understand the intricacies of it and nerd out on like all of the biochemical level things, right? So when I'm average Joe or Susie or Kevin or Karen or whatever words we're using these days, and I go into a pub or a bar, what are like the 3 or 4 things that people can, I'm not going to say expect, because you don't expect something, you don't get your feelings hurt, but something that can be maybe more common that they'll find in the non-alc. Is it still beer and wine, or is it evolving into cocktails now?
I think when we're talking about the UK, beer is a safe bet. I think most premises are going to have a beer option when it comes to a non-alcoholic option. If you go into the middle of nowhere, duck and dog, random 2-hour drive from here, so we pull up to a country pub, likelihood is they're going to have at least one non-alcoholic beer because somebody's going to be driving to that venue, right? That's their only trail of thought. They're not thinking any further outside of that. They might have a section that says mocktails, and it might be a cranberry juice with lime and peach syrup. And it's like, okay, you've got 2 options. When we talk about living in a microcosm, like I live in London, like the epicenter of cocktail culture in Europe, and we have some of the best bars at our fingertips here who have mind-blowingly good NA versions of cocktails, right? So I am trying to think on a UK-wide basis that there is going to be a beer and there's going to be some form of non-alcoholic alternative to a cocktail. Wine, there's a lot of work to do, but I truly believe 2024 we're going to see huge growth in that when it comes to the on-premise. I like to think I have a lot of work to do there. We'll be pushing lots of AF wine alternatives into the UK on-premise market next year because there's a demand for it now. People, and for good reason, for a really long time, there was a lot of bad stuff out there. There's a lot of really poorly made, low quality stuff out there. But now we have technology is advanced. People are coming up with really unique ways to make incredible beverages in the wine alternative space. This isn't just de-alcoholized wine. This is like fermentation styles using different teas, all sorts of things that doesn't just have to be wine, but suits that wine occasion. I think we're going to see huge growth in that in terms of menu visibility. I feel like I'm straying slightly from your original question, but
No, not at all. Not at all. I think it gives people an idea of what to like. If we have listeners that are in the UK, they can go, okay, I can probably count on a beer. I can start to look forward to wine. And if
yeah,
I'm in a pub in a more metroplex kind of region, I can maybe look for a spritz or a highball or a sour or something along those lines,
yeah,
possibly.
that's it.
And
That's
I
it.
think
And
that you've given a pretty good synopsis of what that might look like right now. You know what else gives a good synopsis, Noah?
tell me.
Uh, our ads give us a good synopsis, because without our ads, I can't fund this show. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are powered by Liars Not Alcoholic for the entire first season. We're going to pause here, go to a commercial break, grab some water, whatnot, and then we're going to talk systems when Noah V. I return in just a couple of, actually a few seconds, I guess. See you in a few.
The Liar's non-alcoholic pink spritz.
I taste the world through rose-colored glasses.
Delicious. Stay spirited. Make it a Liar's.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Hope you enjoyed that little teaser from our friends at Liars Not Alcoholic. In this session, in this part of the session, I want to talk about the systems, because you and I have run venues, we've done trainings, we have done everything on the hospitality side, and now in the brand work. What kind of systems? Because I always look at when I approach a business with a non-alcoholic product, I need to have some solutions in mind, right? Like I need to go in, do a little scouting, see what they offer, see what they don't offer, see how I can do something that's within their price point that won't scare them, one, and two, that actually helps them generate better and more income, right? And maybe even evolve their guest list a little bit. So when we look at the systems that bars can implement to help their guests discover these modes of consumption, the menu obviously comes to mind for me, right? Like you've got to have a menu. People aren't going to know names if they can't read them or feel them or hear them, right? So depending on your capabilities. So what are some of the systems that you think are hyper important to, especially in your part of the world, to the movements, so that people can gain access and better access to these products?
Well, I think for the most part, if we are talking about 9 out of 10 people, it's making sure there is visibility on a menu. It sounds so simple, but it really will be the difference in a huge portion of a proprietor making money. If you have a fridge full of non-alcoholic beer and you have 3 non-alcoholic spritzes that you can make, but nothing's on the menu, that's just money down the drain. Like, are you just expecting people to guess? People already feel awkward and nervous and uncomfortable in a venue sometimes, let alone if they're not drinking and they're like, oh my God, what can I drink? I'm just going to get a soda water because I know they'll have that. If you're not providing these options, they don't know it's there. You're missing out on significant increase in money. So that's number one, making sure it's actually just listed somewhere. If you want that to be something more, then it can be much more exciting. If you have a fully fledged cocktail menu and you have 12 amazing cocktails on there, it is totally up to you and your brand of how you style it. But, you know, whether you make this cocktail non-alcoholic and you have something that just signifies that on there, or whether you have completely unique non-alcoholic cocktails that you add to the start or the end or mixed in between, totally up to you, whatever works for you. I just think it makes sense that people can know that there is options for them. That is the key. And
how crazy is it to go into places and still not see drinks on menus? How nuts is that to you? Like
yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, but it just
no.
It still makes my head skip a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess it makes our head spin more because we can see the bottles on the back bar that are not like a non-alcoholic spirit, for example, and we're like, it's confusing. And it can be an intimidating space for people building menus, for people who don't have an understanding or a background in how to compose non-alcoholic cocktails. But you know what? I think we need to break down that barrier as well and help people understand that it's not like, it doesn't have to be this crazy like 8 ingredient cocktail with like this tincture and like this and that and this crazy garnish. Like, no, it has to be well thought through, but it can be 2 ingredients and be incredible. It can be 3 ingredients and be beautiful. And inclusivity is the key here. So yeah, like find the right products that suit your menu, quality, and then understand how to use them. But hopefully there's more and more people working for brands like ourselves now who can come and talk to people about it and show them how to use it. But yeah, I just think there isn't an excuse anymore, no matter what level of skill level your bar team are. You can have a good non-alcoholic option that's delicious for everybody, every walk of life. And it doesn't need to be complicated. Like, yeah, a spritz, a highball, a perfect serve is just more people are walking into bars and ordering like a gin and tonic than some elaborate artisanal cocktail, when we're talking about all of the bars in the UK. So, yeah.
I think, again, we live in a microcosm, and, not everything's the last word, or an ocho palabra, or
Exactly.
a chartreuse swizzle. Like, I love all those things, but they all don't need to be that. Like, still the best ingredient or the best cocktails in the world are 3 or 4 ingredients. And I think that
totally.
sticks true into the non-alcoholic model. Having said all that, and you've got like a generalization of these expectations. What do these models do for, like, being in smaller brands now, even though we have large footprints, working with brands that aren't multi-billion-dollar companies, you have a different set of parameters you work in, right? So when I look at group operations, like models for larger scale operation groups where they might have 15, 20, 30, 40 different stores, either spread across a region or across the globe, it's a different approach because it has to match maybe 7 or 8 different concepts inside of one company. Do you think that do you still think that like the riff model works? Like if I give you 5 blueprints, but they work across 7 stores, and all you have to do is twist X, Y, and Z in the blueprint to produce, just because you can do that with cocktails. And for those of you listening and watching, that's largely what a lot of groups do. We'll take a blueprint and we'll adjust it and give it a new name and a new liquor, and it's something else, right? Which is what we're supposed to do. The non-alc cocktails, again, people, you just said it, and I think I'm answering my own question. People are making it more complicated than it needs to be, right? So it's not as crazy as, it's not reinventing the science. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not reinventing these blueprints. It's tweaking them and adjusting them so that the drinks stay in balance. And when you look at those larger series of spaces, like a venue, like maybe a concert venue, do you think that the Negroni style model is best, or do you think it's those G&Ts, those RTDs, those super approachable, super easy things on the large format spaces? My God, am I wordy today?
It depends on the style of venue, I think, first and foremost. It can be big but still different. If we're talking about concert venue versus cocktail bar chain, then I think slightly different approach, right? You need quick and fast and easy, lack of ingredients, versus, okay, we've got a few more things to work with here. We have space and equipment and training built into our staff to be able to deal with slightly more complicated serves. So I don't think it's one size fits all. What I do think across the board is necessary is, and if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, is education and making sure it's part of the program of training. If you have any form of training that involves telling your bartenders what your house vodka is or your house rum is, then you need to be also telling them what this non-alcoholic product is, what it is, what it tastes like, how do you use it, where does it come from, what's it called? Because again, there's nothing that saddens me more as seeing that bottle on the back bar and asking for it. Think about that person who's built up the confidence to be like, oh my God, I recognize that bottle. Can I have one of those? And the bartender's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. We don't have that. It's like, but I can see it.
It's right there.
Yeah, it's really important for the person looking after the liquids on your back bar to just know it exists and how it exists and why it exists.
Well, both of us are educators, and you brought this up, so I want to bring it up, and I'm going to skip part of the next section because I think it's an important thing for us to talk about. education, awareness, advocacy, all these things kind of live together. And when we're looking at educational systems, and we're talking about education, and especially these newcomers into our field, because I'm an old timer, right? So like, I had a literal Rolodex of cards for recipes behind the bar for a long time.
Nice.
Thank God for Evernote and everything else that came early on in the days. Um, what style of learning should we be concentrating on for the current hospitality professionals and the ones that are just entering, right? Because you see things like web-based trainings that they can do on the bus on the way to work. You've seen still the workbooks, certifications, so forth. What do you think the most effective educational foundations are? Not foundations, but apparati.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And again, not to like swerve one answer, but it there's no way it can be as easy as saying it is just one style
Right.
of training, right? I think you either build in a multifaceted style of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
or you have different options on hand to give to different people who have different styles of learning. I certainly know
Yeah.
if you give me a physical handbook where I have to read, I'm going to struggle to come in the next day and replicate a lot from it. But if you give it to me as a video format or an audio format, because that's how I consume things better, I'll come back
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be able to do that very easily, replicate it. So, yeah, I guess it's down to the company understanding what resource they have to their disposal and the best way to roll
Mm-hmm.
that out. I guess there has to be some unique takes on this. There's
Mm-hmm.
also just a lot of stuff that's built in with brands, you know? So there is a good rapport
Yeah.
once these brands are locked in. Okay, speak to Nick. He has this video and this video on how to make these two drinks that we've got on the menu for the next 3 months. Great, you know?
Yeah.
It gives it a bit more personality. It can't be ignored that I think we're probably moving away from slightly the way we used to learn how to make drinks in terms of like reading books or what have you. Like, yes, there's still a place for that, but it feels like we're living in naturally a more like technology driven world. Therefore,
Yeah.
I can't be ignored that training is going to be based around that too, right?
I think about training a lot, and especially the future proofing of it, because I think that textbooks are important, and when you lose books, you start to lose information. But I think that trainings are, and this is where like the model of the brand ambassador, like we've talked about this on some other episodes, where the brand ambassador model is dying, and the CAM and the RAMs are kind of being repurposed into these roles. But education is still at the forefront of importance for advocacy, because you are getting that tactile moment. And I think that's what you're getting at, is that there's tactile. I need to be able to touch it, smell it, feel it, and understand it, because I am serving something that is all of these physical and
Yeah,
emotional things to another human. And
yeah,
they're gonna have an input and output to whatever they're consuming. And I think like something that's on demand and tactile at the same time is probably where the future is going to have to
yeah. I
move.
think
And
that's it.
accessibility. I think that's
Yeah,
where the brand ambassador isn't dead, is because the accessibility to somebody so that you can ask questions. So
yep.
everyone knows, if you've met me, hit me up on WhatsApp. I'm going to get back to you in 48 hours or less. If I'm out in the middle of a jungle somewhere, which oddly enough happens pretty often with me, or out in the mountains somewhere on a coast where I don't have access, the minute that I get back, I check my messages, and I always prioritize my network and my community's questions so that I can help them help others, right? So
Yeah.
take advantage, if you're listening to this or watching this, take advantage of that access to people like Noah and like myself and like others that you'll see on this season, because we want to share this information. We want to help you help others. That's a lot of our reasons for even doing this kind of work.
Yeah, hundred
Which
percent.
pulls us into the lifestyle section of this talk. And I do want to talk about flavor. Flavor builds trust, as my good friend Dave Broom would say. Uh, Flavor is trust. If I give you a pizza
Mm,
and you're expecting a margarita, and I've snuck some sardines or some anchovies or something in there, and you don't like anchovies, we've got a trust issue at that point, right? Because you're expecting margarita, but you're getting something with fish on it. I would like it, but not everybody else would.
Yeah.
So when non-alcs are massively, and I mean massively, reliant on flavor because we're recreating an experience for someone. If you are an adjacent, if you are somebody that has not experienced alcoholic beverage before or cocktail culture before, which about 12% of the world hasn't, then it's a new experience for you. It's a flavor trip. It's a texture trip. It's an aromatic explosion. What are some of the ways that companies can future-proof their products? We've talked about education. I think that has to be factored into it. But when we look at future-proofing products for the evolution of the industry and as technology advances, the products are going to advance, right? So let's give it like a 12-month, 14-month snapshot. Like where's your head at with that?
Quality is, flavor, I think also a synonym could be quality. It's so important now. So many products on the market. I always compare it to like, just because everybody can record an album in their bedroom and upload it to SoundCloud does not mean that it's better than, just because there's more doesn't mean there's more that's better. The cream's always going to rise to the top. And I kind of see a similarity with non-alc, right? We're going to have to come to a point where it's not oversaturation. It's not that. It's just we're going to have to start to differentiate about who's putting the real care into the quality of the liquids and the stuff that doesn't need to fade away. Just there's a difference. And I think the attention to detail with quality and traceability from start to finish is really important. I think that's part of future-proofing it. I think people are going to put more of an importance on what they're buying. We've seen it in food. We've seen it with people changing their eating habits. If they're eating less meat, they put more of an, and again, this is not everyone. This is people who are in a privileged enough position to be able to choose where their meat comes from. I start to see some of that in drinks. People concerned about sugar content. How is this made? What's the sustainability aspect of it? There's huge bars with massive sustainability programs now who won't even consider you if you don't have X, Y, and Z in place around the sustainability of your product. So I think those are two huge ones really, is how it, like, complete transparency around how it's made and what's going on inside the liquid. And how are you looking after the world alongside that? I think those are two huge tick boxes that are going to be even more monstrously important in 14 months.
I can appreciate that fully, and I appreciate your answer fully, which is also going to make me appreciate the next part of this, because I'm throwing you on the grill, my friend. It's time for the impromptu question. So if you've watched this show before, this is fully episode 3. Yeah, this is not what you thought was coming, because I just skipped like 3 parts of the session. The parts that we're skipping, we've already covered in full, and it's just reiterating. So I'm giving you. I'm a VC person, right? So put a blazer on me and a white T-shirt and a more funky hat, and I live in Cupertino or Mountain View or some shit. So I'm a big VC guy. I come to you and I'm like, Noah, you're fucking brilliant in this. I love what you do. I want you to create a brand. I want you to create a non-alcoholic product and or company, and I'm going to fund it endlessly. What are you going to bring to life? I know that's a loaded question. What are you going to bring to life, and why? And if you don't feel comfortable answering this, I've got one in my back pocket that I can give to you, and I'll mark and edit this entire thing out.
I'll say mine, but I would like to hear yours after as well.
Okay, right on.
I think the idea itself is not creative whatsoever. I think the why is the reason I'm doing it, which benefits the category. Having a background in wine and still so much passion for the wine category and so much passion for like wanting it to be better in terms of inclusivity and growth, or in just every way. I will make the ultimate perfect red wine that shuts everyone up. That just everybody says, but there needs to be a good alcohol-free red wine. I just do that, and then finally everyone has an answer. this isn't. I don't want to blow my own shot. I just want
Yeah.
to stop the conversation so we can all get on with our lives and just carry on moving this category forward. Because it's like every conversation is like, yeah, but when is there going to be a good alcohol-free red? Well, yeah, if we make that, then we can just carry on, and everyone will have their alcohol-free red, right? So that's what I'm making.
Yeah. Right on. I love that answer. That's the thing that we talk about, right? Behind the doors, when we're done drinking for the day, drinking all the non-alcoholic cocktails and maybe having a lager or two here and there. It's the one thing everyone misses is and there's some good ones out there, but you're right.
Yeah, that's
there
not
needs
me.
To be like that definitive one, right?
Yeah,
There
it's
needs
not
to be
me.
a definitive, and I don't think anybody.
Yeah, I'm not poo-pooing the category. I'm not like there is a ton of alcohol-free reds that I actually really enjoy. I'm not dismissing it. I work with some. I love them. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for them. I just think, can there be one universally that everyone can just agree on?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's certain categorical signifiers inside of traditional spirits that when you say X spirit, this comes to mind. And I think it's same thing with some of the, like when you say California Chardonnay, you're thinking big butter bombs. There's 2 or 3 that really come to mind, right? So I'll give you the other one since you were game for it. I'm not out this late anymore. I found myself out this late once when we were in Lisbon, and that's because we were out with friends in the past 4 months. But it's last call, right? And if you're watching the show, you've seen this question. It's one of my favorites. I actually asked this in interviews when I'm building teams. It's last call. I don't care about your drink at this point. I want to know what the last song that you put on the jukebox is at last call. How are you walking or sashaying or sauntering out of that bar at last call?
Is this a question for me? Are you asking me that?
Oh, yeah. That's the question. Yeah.
Oh my God. You know, we could like do a whole other podcast just me answering that. Like,
I know.
I could go on this question.
I feel like we maybe should next season. We'll dedicate an entire episode to just last call songs and why.
Perfect.
Yeah, that might actually be a fun episode.
It's actually a really good podcast idea. Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I want to give 2 answers, not to cheat, but I want to have one as a punter and I want to have one as a bar owner, because I have so many good memories of like last orders songs when I was in charge of the playlist. But it's also like signifies that you're closing. And I've seen many people try many different methods. I think there's a classic, probably 10 that people rotate. There's the last 2 I remember doing. Rocket Man by Elton John was like that. Whenever I hear that, I think of a closing song. It feels like a really good closing song. And then most recently, I was doing Avril Lavigne's "I'm With You." Which is an absolute emotional banger. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I think if I'm a punter, I want something long. So I'm choosing a long song, and I want something I can sing a lot to. Realistically, we're looking at something like Bohemian Rhapsody, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we are. If you want people going out on an up, right?
Yeah.
You know, like they're carrying on to maybe the after hours or to a diner or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, I could have said Tom Waits. I could have said much more morose things, but I just don't want to end my night like that anymore. Yeah. I'll save that for my funeral.
Yeah. Oh man, I've already got my playlist built for the funeral, and Stacy's like, "There's a lot of metal on this." I'm like, "It's gonna be a party." So
that's great.
Make sure.
Yeah, nice.
Make sure it's this playlist. It's hip hop, metal, and countries. Yeah, honky tonk. So have fun with that. And some brass thrown in there. Right on. Yeah. Really good answer. All right, so this is the plug section. Mine for right now. I don't know why, but I see the entire bar lighting up when I say this and singing in unison. The Circle of Life from Lion King. I don't know why, but I really want to see that happen at last call. You just see everybody singing it together in unison as they waddle out of the bar. I think that'd be amazing.
Incredible.
So
That's
this
a good
is
idea.
the plug section. You get to mention anything that you want to, anything you're working on, speaking engagements, new projects, anything that you want the public to be aware of. This is your time for it.
Cool, man. I mean, yeah, I didn't fully kind of finish where I was at in my career, so I guess that's the thing to promote now because it's what's going on. It's the new thing to plug that I'm doing. I'm the new portfolio ambassador for Core Drinks. That's Kore, Core Drinks in the UK.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's amazing. I say congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
everybody else is hearing clapping and cheering in the background.
Exactly. We're a non-alc focused drink sales agency, so we look after drinks of a variety of ABVs. But I am in charge of all no and low products, and we're going to have a very exciting 2024 by improving visibility across off and on trade for a variety of amazing premium products that we think deserve way more attention and just start to help normalize it. Keep on, as much as I am selling, I am also always advocating and educating because it all is in tandem, isn't it? So, yeah, that's what's going on. I've just got a busy year ahead with that, really. Yeah, and you can find us and myself on Instagram pretty easily. So you just see all the information going on there.
Where can people find you on Instagram?
Noah
Villeneuve. Find you on Instagram.
That's at Noah Villenueve _ VILLENEUVE and at core _ drinks as well. Yeah, man.
And core is with a K?
Core with a K.
Right on. Well, as you know, I'm Nick Crutchfield. You can find me on TaleFeather podcasts on all of the podcast things across the entire universe and on YouTube podcasts. You can look for us every other week. We're going to be starting January 2nd. No, actually, this will air on January the 30th, my birthday. So this is a pretty cool birthday present.
Happy birthday, Nick. There we go.
Thank you. I will be in Thailand on the way to a elephant sanctuary on this day. So I'm looking forward to it. I give back a week of vacation every year to do something. So we're going to go work on an elephant refuge to help clean and in the rehabilitation process, which really means shoveling a lot of stuff and prepping food, which is fine. On the off weeks of TaleFeather, we have something called One Good Thing. So what will happen in between now and when you have seen this, I will have listened to it. I will have found something very inspirational and positive inside of the episode. And I will have given you a 20-minute diatribe, 15 to 20-minute diatribe on the following week. So in a week from now, you'll hear me talk about something that Noah touched on that touched my heart. And I will talk about it in depth on one good thing. And that happens on the off weeks of TaleFeather. And without any further ado, thank you for our songbirds for showing up, tuning in, and listening and watching what we have to share with you. That's a wrap. Put a feather in my hat from the nest. This is Nick Crutchfield, TaleFeather. Noah, UK extraordinaire. We'll see you next time on TaleFeather. Have a great day, everyone.
The Liar's non-alcoholic pink spritz.
I taste the world through rose-colored glasses.
Delicious. Stay spirited. Make it a Liar's.